Hi everyone, today's May 3rd and I'll keep myself under control today. Uh, I'm going to basically concentrate on the subject that I talked about in my last video, but I am going to go through a couple of things real quick. The first is, you probably know that the Kansas governor had signed legislation into law so that any federal agent coming into Kansas and trying to enforce federal firearms regulations would be subject to arrest. Not all of them, but there were some specific ones. But the point is that they stood up against the federal government. You know, Utah had a bill like that, Texas had a bill like that, Wyoming had a bill like that, and I know there's some others. I think the ones in Utah and Wyoming did not make it. And you'll never guess why. The Republicans stopped it. So, you know, you can't depend on these people. They still have this control mechanism in them, even though they talk conservatively. I'm not sure what the status of the Texas one is. But just so that you know what happened, Holder sent a letter to the Kansas governor saying, the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution says that you must abide by federal law and allow federal agents to do their jobs. And that's not true. The supremacy clause is bound by the rest of the Constitution. Okay, so I told you that this would get to be a war between the states, a second one. We have it over the gold with Texas. Now we have this thing with Kansas and other states, of course, where county sheriffs have had a lot of influence to stand up against the federal firearms regulations. So things are heating up in our country. All of this that's going on is designed to divide us. Okay, that's what it is. It's not a unification. The purpose of the central government when all of this was put together was, yes, to provide kind of a central point for the things that were necessary for the people in the states to contract with a central government to take care of. And it was very limited, of course. You all probably know that. But over the years, because of our failure to not be vigilant, the states wanting to get money from the federal government and other things, you know, that states and individual rights thing has been whittled down. The federal government just keeps gathering more and more to it. And we really need to stop it. Unfortunately, we should have stopped it a long time ago, and we didn't. I wanted to say, you know, a lot of people are feeling that we're making some great strides against the Obama administration. I just want to caution everybody. Don't forget that the puppets that they set out there for us, those are the people that are causing the problem. They're just the front men, okay? We actually have to get deeper than that. We have to go and reveal the darkness and the evil and the people that are behind the scenes that are running this, to keep them out of our government. And that is going to be a little more difficult because they like to hide. And some of you already know some of them, but basically I call them the banksters. You know, it could be corporate entities, which are a real problem. But that's where we need to look. Don't think that just because you get rid of this puppet that they're not going to have another one to put in. We got to get out of that left-right paradigm and thinking that fixing that is the answer, because that's not where the problem is. All right, let's see if I need to do anything else here before I get into the big subject that I wanted to. Yes, I want to say this, and this is from the bottom of my heart. I've written responses to a couple of people, but you know, I never thought I'd have so many people that would come to my side and offer the type of emotional and spiritual support that you have. And I can't answer all of you, and I regret that. But if I did that, I couldn't do the other thing that I'm trying to do. So I just want to thank you all for being there, for encouraging me. And I know there are people that don't disagree with me, and frankly, or that do disagree with me. And even the people that disagree with me, I appreciate that you bring up your points, because in order to solve this thing, we really do need to look at it from a lot of different angles. And so I don't take personal offense to somebody saying, well, hold on, Roy, you know, look at this, or, you know, you've done this. Where I'm going to have a problem with you is if you start name calling, and then we're going to lose communication. I'm also aware that I have what appear to be supporters out there that are actually government operatives who face off to the ones that act nasty to me. I'm familiar with Mutt and Jeff routine, and I'm going to just tell those guys up front right now, if you've taken an oath of office, abide by it. okay? If you haven't, you're doing criminal things, okay? And what you see is what you get, okay? Everything that you ever want to know about me is on my channel, okay? In one form or another, it's there, okay? So you're not going to blackmail me. You're not going to shut me up, you know? I've learned a lot over my years, okay? And I've been on both sides of this fence of the government. I've been its victim, and I've been its its employee, okay, its agent. So you're not going to get me anywhere. So you might as well just stop, okay? I'm an open book, all right? But I am emphasizing certain things right now. And again, for you people that are there, helping me to dispel all the fog of war that's going on to get to the truth, I want to thank you for being there. Okay. United States Constitution. You know, yesterday I got upset because the U.S. military did this thing where they say that they can court-martial people who talk about their religion to other people. Now, there's a thing called employ the least amount of force possible. Okay, that's a principle of law of peace officers. It used to be. Now it seems to have gone the other way. But I want to take it from that angle. You know, you don't need to court-martial somebody merely for talking to another person about their faith. That's way over the top. That's designed to shut people down. That's designed to shut the faith down, to intimidate it, no matter what it is, okay? And I think you all realize that. If somebody is trying to push their faith on somebody and it's starting to cause a problem in a military unit, you tell that person that the people that they're talking to don't want to hear it, okay? And to go away. And if they don't, after being told that, then you go after them. You don't make a blanket statement that you can't talk about your religion. I don't care if you're in the military or not. The military's good order and discipline has nothing to do with merely talking about your faith, okay? And I'm going to read this. It's the Bill of Rights, of course, the U.S. Constitution, and we're going to be talking about the... You'll have to pardon that noise in the background. You'll have to bear with me for a minute. This is the First Amendment to the Constitution. This is in the Bill of Rights, and this is where this particular thing applies. Now, you'll remember that we've said that once they go after the Second Amendment, well, they went after the Fourth with the Patriot Act and the NDAA and all those, and then they started going after other things, Second Amendment, and now the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. So I'm going to read this to you real quick, okay? This is the First Amendment, and you all can look this up. Congress, okay, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Okay? Congress. Now, we can get into a legal argument as to whether the military can, and for good order and discipline in the military, there are some restrictions, but they can't go too far. They certainly can't just right off the top say that Christians can't talk about their faith because it might be proselytizing. No. There are other problems of good and orderly discipline in the military that they are disregarding for social engineering purposes. And I won't go into those right now, but if you use your head and look back about some of the things that I've talked about, the way that they've, brought women into the service, and now, and I'm not gay bashing. I don't care if you are, okay? But they make special privileges to people like gays, and the military will allow you to marry a gay partner in certain states, and it'll be everywhere eventually. Well, they do these things for people like that, and then they turn around and they call Christians terrorists and that they can't discuss their faith. So the good order and discipline in the Army, I frankly, and I'll just be upfront with this, okay? When women first came into the service, okay, and I mean, my mom was a whack, okay, in the Second World War, so, and most of you who listen to my videos know where I'm coming from here. She was the one that instilled in me that it was a bad place for women, and she had been there. She was an officer under President, at the time, General Eisenhower. So, I'm not coming from this from just a viewpoint without any logic or reason behind it, and she's the one that instilled in me that it was a bad idea, and I won't go into all that. I've kind of mentioned it before. But it does cause problems. We had a love triangle. I think it was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, where one guy shot the other two, the female soldier and the guy, and then himself, I believe, is what happened. But the point is, this happens everywhere. Private Jessica Lynch talked about some of that in some of her later commentaries on what happened to her. It's rampant in the military, and that breaks down order and discipline. The gay thing is the same thing. Do I want to be in a foxhole, having to do the things that, take care of bodily functions in a foxhole, knowing this guy over here is looking at me as a piece of meat? They'll say, no, we don't do that. Oh, I'm sorry. I've had a lot of experience with this, and I'm going to say it again. I don't care if you're gay, but I am a dedicated heterosexual. I am not, all right, going to change that. I'm not a potential convert, okay? And a lot of gays think that only difference between, and again, I'm not bashing, but I just want to tell you, you can see how this can interfere in good order and discipline in the military. You're afraid to do certain things because you don't know how you're being viewed by this guy. Now, you could say, well, closet gays would cause the same problem. The problem is the establishment's giving it credence, and that's the problem. Because then they think they can go ahead. Anyway, good order and discipline isn't the reason why they did this thing about Christians. Okay, I read this thing on the First Amendment. You see, and I just talked about all that because of the right to peaceably assemble, the right to redress of grievance, the right of freedom of speech. Okay, all of those things, the freedom of religion, and that the Congress can make no law respecting it or prohibiting the free exercise of it. Okay. Those are important concepts. And what's happened in this country is they are making laws. And the DHS calling Christians terrorists, that's not a law, but that policy can be moved into law like it is in the UCMJ now in the military. It is a problem, absolutely. And it's going to get worse. Okay. Maybe I didn't explain all that well, but I wanted to say this. I mentioned the Bohemian Grove, and in some of my other videos about what they do there. And you've got to understand that this is the spiritual, I don't even call it that, this is the religion of the people that are running our country. They might pose as Christians, they might pose as Jews, they might pose as any number of things, even atheists. But if they go to the Bohemian Grove, and a great number of them do, or at least sympathize with that, that is the fire of Molech. They worship the owl, the symbol of Molech. It's kind of a rendition of the old Baal, and that's why I put the two together. And they actually believe it. They actually cremate a little baby doll. And they might do real ones for all I know. But what grown man in his right mind is going to do that? Unless there's an evil purpose to it. And there is. It's to do away with their conscience. That's what the cremation of cares about. And I've talked about that before. So my concern yesterday was looking at this and seeing that not only do they do this in secret, but they're the worship of their god entity, Molech and Baal, Lucifer, all kinds of names you can call it. They are trying to force us to submit to that. They are respecting an establishment of religion covertly at the expense of all others. Now, a lot of Christians want to be very, very... How did I get into a religious discussion when I'm talking politics? Because they're intertwined. Christians do, like a lot of other faiths, want to say that everybody has to accept their version of it. Let me caution you. I understand where you're coming from. I understand the fire in your heart. I understand the commandment you feel you have to spread the good word. I understand that. To accept God, or in your terms, Jesus Christ. But you have to understand, your experience cannot be someone else's. All you can do is say, this is what happened to me. Here, look at it. See what you think. Then you have to leave it alone. It's between God and that person. It is a personal relationship. And if you think, those of you who actually are, as you call, saved, look at what happened. It was a personal experience to you. All right, and it may have been handed to you by somebody else, but don't judge them and say if they don't accept Jesus, they're going to hell. I mean, then you've already set aside the very thing you're trying to tell them, which is to develop this personal relationship. And God might deal with them differently than they deal with you. It all has to do with what their level of understanding is. Unlike unrighteous governments that say that ignorance of the law is no excuse, ignorance of God's law is an excuse. Ignorance, ignorance is the wrong word. Not knowing about it. Ignorance, that'd be something else, okay? Ignoring a law, that's true. Knowing it and not doing it, that's a whole other thing. But if you're really not aware of it, you can only be held accountable for what you are aware of. And so go ahead and talk to them about your experience, but don't hold them to judgment if they don't accept it, because they have to get their own experience. I'll get a little flack from Christians over that, but we just have to understand that this is in fact a personal experience with God. And I always kind of get into that on these political discussions, but that's because a true evil religion is at work in this country, and it's taking over. And I mean, we saw it with I was on a radio show the other day. Some of you might know about this, and they contacted me again because of some things that are happening. A New Hampshire representative, and I'd say her name, but I'm not sure how to pronounce it, stood up and said that she believes that there's a problem with the FBI version of events in Boston, and she's getting inundated with attacks on her character, death threats, things like this, merely for saying there's evidence here to suggest that there's something bigger going on and we need to have somebody else look at this. She's doing what her oath of office requires, her morality and her conscience. And yet people want to find fault with that. I'm going to tell you this, okay? The people that find fault with her are the very same people that support these people that worship Molech and Baal in the Bohemian Grove. They're all intertwined. The pedophile rings in Pennsylvania. The Franklin cover-up in Omaha, Nebraska. Oh yeah, I know about all those. Because that is part of their religion, okay? Pedophilia is part of it. And I could spend some time about this maybe sometime, but not today. Of course, I always put things off. It's just because there's so much going on. Okay, I keep repeating myself here. I'm going to leave it at that today. There is an awful lot of things happening right now, and I wish I could address them all. But I am in the middle of something else right now. It has to do with this representative from New Hampshire, and some other things. And so I hope you'll pardon me. Again, I just want to thank everybody. Whether you agree with me or disagree, this dialogue is the important part. Okay, eventually we can get to a place. This is called debate, and I'm not going to debate with people on the channel. I don't have time to do that, but amongst each other you can bring things up, and I try to read as many of the comments as I have time for. And if I feel really strongly about something that I think I need to address, I will. Okay, but I'll try to use my communication with you through these videos. For instance, one lady brought up the no-hide laws. Actually, this is the second time it's come up. No-hide laws were a rabbinic interpretation of the events after the deluge, and it's listed in the Talmud. It's not in a scripture per se. It's rabbinic interpretation. I find them, by and large, with some exceptions as I explained in my comment, I find them by and large noble, but there are some problems. For instance, like I was saying, the imposition of certain factors on people that shouldn't have it applied to them. But regardless, my point is that this lady said that these no-hide laws were listed as such in the 91 Education Act, I believe is what it was. If it was listed that way in there, that's a violation of the Constitution. If they were just moral principles that we should abide by without giving credence to a particular religion, then they're probably okay. But something like that that I am aware of, that I'm actually educated in it and I've had experience in it. I'll try to comment on it and try to give my feelings on it. In this case, I agree with her. It probably should not have been listed as such in the law, if in fact that's how it was done. Any respecting of any religion, as such, moral principles kind of, they go across the board. You're going to find moral principles, the Ten Commandments, which, by the way, the Jews believe that is just for them. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's really the way it goes. They would say that all the Noahide laws apply to everybody else, the Gentiles, but regardless, there are certain moral principles that go across the board. You don't want to steal. You don't want to, you don't want to commit adultery with your neighbor's wife. Those kinds of things. You don't want to lie. Whatever. Those are pretty straightforward. Worshipping the God of the Bible, now we're getting into, something that probably shouldn't be dictated. People need to, again, that's a personal experience, and that's where I'll stand on that. And I hope you all understand the wisdom of that. Our founding fathers did the same thing. Okay. Now for today, thanks for listening. Sorry it took a little longer than I anticipated. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.